a first lady. That's the country family. Now it's time for us to stand up.
Oh, jeez.
With Hillary. Hillary. Stand up for Hillary.
It's a song everybody's singing, right?
Well, we are.
7:15. So, you know, the Washington Free Beacon really cracked this Clinton Foundation story, and then Peter Schweizer's book came out, and this is a story that's not going away because the tentacles of the Clinton Foundation are so vast, the amount of money is so vast, that we're discovering more stuff every day. And the Washington Beacon has a new blockbuster. A little-known private foundation controlled by Bill and Hillary Clinton donated $100,000 to the New York Times charitable fund in 2008, the same year the newspaper's editorial page endorsed Mrs. Clinton in the Democratic presidential primary, according to tax documents reviewed by the Washington Free Beacon. To talk to us about this is the reporter from the Washington Free Beacon, Alana Goodman. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you coming on with us. So, the Clinton Foundation. Now, what is this? This is a foundation. This is a new foundation.
Yeah. So this is actually a private foundation. It's basically the Clinton personal charitable vehicle where they give to different causes that they find interesting. And one of those causes in 2008 was the New York Times Neediest Cases Fund, which is a charity that's run by the New York Times. And the people on the board of the charity are top Times executives, Times board members, cousins of Arthur Sulzberger, whose family owns the Times. So they got a $100,000 check from the Clintons.
Now, again, it's certainly not shocking that the New York Times would have endorsed Mrs. Clinton in the primary because...
No, I wouldn't say it was shocking. I mean, it was controversial at the time, and I think it was reported that there was some divisiveness inside the Times newsroom about it because, you know, there were a lot of outlets at that point that were endorsing Obama, and there were a lot of Democrats that were supporting Barack Obama at the time. So it was a little controversial. And then there were reports in Vanity Fair and the New Republic shortly after the endorsement that the Times editorial board had apparently been leaning towards endorsing Barack Obama, but had changed at the last minute after the intervention of the publisher, Arthur Sulzberger, who Vanity Fair reported had potentially been petitioned by one of Clinton's top financial backers, Steve Radner. So there's that backstory too, which is a little, you know, adds more context to it.
So the Neediest Case Fund, which is the New York Times charity, gets $100,000, which is certainly one of the larger contributions that they get. And the Clinton Foundation Fund had not donated to the Neediest Case Funds, donated to the Neediest Case Funds since 2008. So, you know, again, is this a case of, well, they decided to drop $100K on the New York Times just to sort of shore up their support over at the New York Times, and then once they didn't need them anymore because Mrs. Clinton obviously wasn't running in 2012, so they just stopped writing the checks? It was a one-off?
Well, it's actually also interesting to note the Times did not get back to multiple requests for the date of when this check was due. Or actually, they did get back to us. They told us that they weren't going to comment on that. They repeatedly refused to comment to me about when the date of the check was. Well, you know, before the story was published and after the story was published, they went to BuzzFeed on Monday evening and gave them that information. So we know it now. The check was actually written by the Clinton Foundation in June of 2007. So this was right in the middle of the Democratic primary. This was about 6 months after Hillary Clinton announced. And apparently that check, according to the Times, got lost in the mail. And so it was replaced. It was a replacement check that the Times got in June of 2008. And that is what was indicated in Clinton's tax documents. So, unfortunately, according to the Times, there was nobody, the person who was receiving the checks for them at this point is no longer with them, and so they have no other like details about, you know, what the check was for or anything like that. But yeah, it is interesting that the same year she's running, she's in the middle of this primary, and she writes this check to the New York Times charity and then never does it again.
Some of the other donations that you also write about, and I know it's the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation, by the way, and this is separate from the Clinton Foundation.
Isn't that the same thing?
No, this is the Clinton. This is the Clinton Family Foundation.
Family Foundation.
The private foundation. This is smaller. They give about a little over $1 million a year, and it's financed personally by the Clintons, their own personal charitable giving.
Right. So that's significant because it's a different source of money. It's a totally different trust. And
exactly.
And obviously the regular Clinton Foundation is much larger and gives away much more money. The Clintons also contributed, apparently, money to the University of Arkansas Special Collections between 2006 and 2011. And by the way, I'd like to point out that the Free Beacon was banned briefly from that library collection.
Yeah, last summer.
Which is kind of a badge of honor, by the way. But and the University of Arkansas Special Collections pulled Dale Bumper's diary from the archive in March at the request of his family after Mother Jones reported on unflattering entries about the Clintons. So I mean, this is kind of interesting. You write checks to the library, and then the library kind of sanitizes what their collections say.
Well, it was very interesting. The University of Arkansas library, I found that interesting because, you know, the Diane Blair papers, in 2007, Jake Tapper wrote about how, you know, these papers were not open to the public, and, you know, he went to the library officials, and he was like, when are you guys opening it? And they apparently weren't going to open this archive up until after the election. And this was right in the middle of the Democratic primary. And just at this point, you know, the Clintons are donating every year to the archive. And, you know, I'm not saying that definitely means that, you know, the Clintons are saying, oh, in return for this donation, we want you to keep this closed. But it's just an interesting,
right.
You know, additional piece of information, and it raises some questions.
All right, Alana, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it. Washington Free Beacon reporter. You can follow her on Twitter at Alana Goodman, Alana Goodman. It's 7:23, Talk Radio 790 KABC.